Hello, I am Frisco 4003, and today I'm doing a bit of a filler video, more or less just me telling about my fictional company, the Oklahoma and Pacific. Starting off, the Oklahoma and Pacific is in that fictional world, a Class 1 railroad operating out of Oklahoma City, its headquarters, and connects, operates in every state south of Kansas and west of Arkansas, and towards the west coast. It goes north into Oregon, completely avoiding California. Mainly because of California. It used to operate in California, but due to California's recent acts going against diesel locomotives, OKMP has opted just to leave California altogether. Also, fictional world, BNSF doesn't exist. The OKMP bought it out. Yeah, that happened. Anyways, the OKMP was founded 1897, I think. Don't quote me, even though this is my fictional company. I have a doc, but I can't look at my docs right now for whatever reason, so yeah. But it was founded 1897 and ran from Fort Smith, Arkansas to LaFleur, Oklahoma, with a stop at Worcester, Oklahoma, with two other stations in Podo, Oklahoma, and Worcester, Oklahoma. Primarily hauling coal until the coal mines went dry, then switched to mainly passenger until it got more business. During this time, it was also growing south towards Texas. By 1920, it had reached Texas, running total mileage running from Fort Smith to Fort Worth. It began running its first luxury, quote unquote luxury train, the Pioneer Limited, which at the time, since it was the 1920s, it was pulled by a 040. Not by 040s, 440s, sorry. None of my things re-edited. Here's maybe some music. The company would go on and continue expanding west, building its own right-of-way, not renting any. Eventually, it would get to New Mexico, where it met up with Denver and Rio Grande. This is when the OKMP decided to make its own narrow gauge railroad, so it started expanding north using standard gauge. It kept expanding north and completely forgot about the narrow gauge, and reached Durango, and stopped construction there into the San Juan Valley because they didn't want the Rio Grande to see them as a competitor, more or less an ally. So they didn't want to encroach on their territory too much. The OKP did build a line going through the Oklahoma Panhandle to Denver, which that is the current location of the Daylight Industries headquarters. Which, for those of you who are not in my Discord or either of my Discord servers that I am active in constantly when I have access to the internet, Daylight Industries is the parent company to the Oklahoma and Pacific. That came about because of issues during the 1960s, which I'll get to that later. The Oklahoma and Pacific during First World War, backtracking a bit, was hauling primarily military munitions from McAllister to Fort Smith to be transferred over to the Frisco. Now you see where I get my name. During this time, the OKP was making lots of money, which was being put into maintenance, buying new locomotives, and expansion. By 1930, the Oklahoma Pacific began buying larger steam locomotives, primarily from Alco. Most of its previous locomotives were built by Baldwin, but from 1929 onwards, almost all of the locomotives were either A, built exclusively by Alco, or B, built in-house at the OKP Fort Worth shops, which became known as the Altoona Shops of Texas, because the OKP liked building its own locomotives because they knew what they wanted. Oklahoma Pacific through the 1930s was struggling because of the Great Depression, lost a lot of agriculture income, so they decided to switch to oil. They reached the oil fields in Texas and New Mexico, and they already had some in Oklahoma, so they started shipping oil, which gave an extra boost. They also had a lot of major construction projects during this time, which allowed them to make more jobs, thus stimulating the economy a bit. By 1936, the Oklahoma Pacific had grown to about 2,523 miles of track, having 5 major terminal stations, those being OKPR Fort Worth Terminal, OKPR Oklahoma City Terminal, OKPR Denver Terminal, and OKPR Santa Fe Terminal, along with a terminal in Fort Smith that was abandoned during the World War II due to lack of ridership out of the station, and thus the Pioneer Limited's route was changed. It still went up the original route up to Poto, then it started going west towards Oklahoma City and finally terminated in Denver, which it still runs that route to this day. Now, the OKMP had a bit of a thing for Pacifics and Mikados, though those two were starting not to cut it on passenger service, so they looked to the Union Pacific. They saw the Challengers and thought, hey, we should get one. They got one. Only one. They found it worked best on freight, not passenger service, because the OKMP just built its own coaches, and those coaches were quite light and really didn't need that much power. The trains were just very long. Then they put in a massive order for Pullman in the 1940s of Pullman heavyweight steel cars, and their Pacifics couldn't handle that much weight, because these Pacifics were designed 1920s by the Oklahoma Pacific, so they didn't particularly like that. So the OKMP saw that the Union Pacific was building the big boys. So they asked the Union Pacific, and then they asked Alco for a total of 1, just proof of concept. It was shipped. When it arrived in Fort Worth, it received heavy modifications from a big boy. It still retained its 488 wheel arrangement. However, it was modified into what the OKMP calls a Wasatch Class B. It has 89-inch drive wheels, and the FRA didn't exist. The Interstate Commerce Commission didn't really like this, but they couldn't really do anything about it because the OKMP followed all the regulations to the letter. So, OKMP decided and started running their passenger trains using the Wasatch Class B, and then as well as modified as new build Pacifics. In the 1940s, the Wasatch Class B was hauling mostly the longer distance express trains on the OKMP.
Back to the stop.
The OKMP also continued expanding west, eventually reaching California. The Wasatch Class B numbered 3388, if I remember correctly, and was also named Hank Williams, after the country music artist. The naming happened in 1990. The OKMP also put smoke deflectors on it. They soon realized that smoke deflectors weren't needed because it's a big boy. Big boys didn't need smoke deflectors, but they kept them on anyways because, and I'm quoting from fictional people here, it looks damn cool. Yeah. The OKMP also got the licenses to use Grey Ghost. Well, not Grey Ghost, that doesn't exist. Greyhound. The Greyhound livery of Union Pacific. Mainly because the OKMP and the Union Pacific, it had I had a north-south express train running from Houston, Texas, all the way to Omaha, Nebraska. It was a variant of the Pioneer Limited called the Cattle Drive Express. And that lasted until the 1960s. And Union Pacific got rid of all its passenger service. And that's when the train was discontinued. OKMP also never got streamlined steam locomotives because it never found a need for them. The Wasatch. They never ordered any more Wasatch Class Bs either, and during the 1950s they were beginning dieselization, but never fully completed it, rather opting to keep some of their steam locomotives in service, because the OKMP keeps building new locomotives and parts for them, thanks to the Fort Worth shops. It was also during this time that the OKMP began having financial issues, mainly because of issues regarding the constant manufacturing of parts for obsolete technology, as some people would say. So, the company, going off topic a little bit, is relevant to the topic. The company is owned, the OKMP has been owned by one family its entire existence, and that was the Daylight family. Yes, if you're wondering, that name is borrowed from the Daylights. The Daylights have the current CEO of Daylight Industries, Richard Daylight. It's his great-great-great-grandfather that founded the company. Currently, it's his grandfather in charge of the company. His father never got involved with it, and his father was a coal miner in West Virginia. Died of black lung. Anyways, his grandfather decided to break the company in half. And the larger of the two halves would go on and start doing other things other than railroading. That would become Daylight Industries, and it would own the smaller portion, which is the Oklahoma and Pacific. Daylight Industries took over operations of OKMP management in 1962 and began going into weapons technology as well, mainly to make some extra money. They didn't plan to make any high-powered rifles or anything. They started out making pistols for specifically the Army. Desert Storm broke out. They were asked to make rifles. They started making rifles. Well, it was the Korean War broke out. They started making rifles. Then, once the Korean War's over, they went back just to making pistols. Then the Vietnam War broke out, so they started making rifles again. And they kept rifles this time, eventually making their own variants. And then a series of multiple incidents of people trying to steal stuff from Daylight Industries prompted a specific group to be created. This group will become known as Midnight Guard. Midnight Guard currently is heavily affiliated with Daylight Industries and is a PMC. Daylight Industries has permission to operate a Midnight Guard under the condition that Midnight Guard acts as a branch of the U.S. Army in the event of a war. Meaning that every Midnight Guardsman has to go through at least U.S. Army training. Basic training, specifically. But the elite group, known as the Rising Sun Group... No, wait. I'll get my lore mixed up here, hold on. It's known as the Cherokee Guard Division. This elite group mainly operates in Oklahoma. It is the most dangerous and receives the training of U.S. Navy SEALs, as well as Marines. They are considered the most dangerous people in the country, other than the U.S. Marines and SEALs. They are trained to kill, and they only ask you to do one thing. They only ask you to stop once. Otherwise, you're going to get seriously hurt or killed. You too. It's all fiction. Leave me alone about it. Meanwhile, Rising Sun Group arose in Japan, mainly to help with reconstruction after World War II. This has also shown Daylight Industries' interest in rail industry in Japan. They began producing 3-foot 6-inch gauge equipment and sending it over, including modified standard gauge locomotives. Yes, inside frame Pacifics. Just think of a 491 larger boiler. It's inside frame and it's Pacific. Yeah. Going back to the Oklahoma Pacific. The Oklahoma Pacific during the 70s and 80s began experimenting with AI, specifically a variant, an AI, a personality AI. This AI was to mainly give their famous locomotives that were still in service, 3388, and a couple of E55 Mikado's personalities. Yes, Thomas and Friend stuff, but they didn't have a face. The technology worked barely because microchips were new and AI was still being developed, all that. They didn't have programmable voices. During this time, the OKMP was running was focusing on freight, so its passenger trains lost relevance, but they still ran them. They completely refused the government to give up their passenger service because their passenger service was profitable, barely, mainly because they also tied in freight with it, express goods. They also bought out the Alaska Railroad and began operating freight and passenger trains there. Yes, they bought out railroad from the government. I don't know if I should intertwine my lore with my friends. I don't know yet. Just tell me what y'all think. I've been rambling for a solid 20 minutes now, just about. Anyways, up until the during this time, nothing really major happened. If you want me to go into details about specific eras of the OKMP, put it down in the comments, but I'm going to take this quick time to thank you all for helping me reach 50 subscribers. This will probably be another one of my 50 subscriber special things. I haven't decided yet. That'll be decided tomorrow. Because, as you can see, I'm on a bus. So, yeah. Anyways, the OKMP, from 2000, then the incidents in 2001 happened. Yes, 9/11, fictional world 9/11 affected Daylight Industries as well. Daylight Industries was seen as a bit of a political beacon, seeing how it operated PMC that worked with the U.S. government. So it became a target. A U-Haul with a improvised explosive device was placed outside of the Daylight Industries headquarters building in Denver. And as soon as the first plane hit the World Trade Center in New York, it went off, destroying half the structure and causing the rest to causing most of the building to collapse. What remained was mostly the frame, which was made of solid steel, because Daylight Industries wasn't cheaping out on a building meant for its headquarters. You don't do that. Now, at this time, Richard Daylight had just become CEO, and he was off doing military training when this happened. So he appointed his sister's CEO of the company to watch over it. She was killed in the attacks, thus making Richard very mad, and he joined the Navy SEALs. He got revenge.